All right, everyone. Hey, we are live after about 6 minutes of technical difficulty. Again, my Zoom app was not wanting to open up the Facebook Live. It would show up and the page went blank. So it just like disappeared. So, hey, Cheryl, glad you're here. Sorry we're a little bit late. Hey, real quick, Cheryl, while you're here, would you have time? You sent me that information on that swim school in real close to where you're at there in Indiana. Would you have some time sometime today to jump on a call? I want to talk to you about a few ideas I have with that before I reach out to them, either today or maybe on Monday. So let me know if you have some time, and then if so, we'll figure out a good time in which to chit chat for a little bit on the phone about that. Okay. Um, anyways, what we're talking about is we're on the corner of CPR and First Aid, and I really want to share a story about CPR, how it played an important role in my life, um, who I saved, and why I chose to learn CPR. Here's the exam. Here's Let's back up. My main reason for learning CPR was following my daughter's accident when she drowned. We had a CPR course. Actually, the two paramedics that were on call that handled the call for my daughter, we took care of their training to get them American Red Cross, American Heart certified. So we paid for all that to get them certified. We then bought the antes and dummies. Um, to be able to for them to use for training aids. That we then sponsored. We worked with the American Red Cross. We worked with the local agencies. We sponsored and put on basically CPR training. We paid for all that for the people, so there was no cost to them to do that. We raised the funds in order to do that through bowling parties and events and things like that we had with our nonprofit that we had set up, our Kelsey Fund that we had. Um, so we did that for numerous years. We put through a lot of people. The first thing was for myself to get CPR trained. Um, if you are CPR trained, you probably think, if you're anything like me, when I went through it, it was like, God, I hope I never have to use this. I'll never remember what I have to do. And of course, you talk to people in the medical field that'll tell you, if you're called to use your CPR, don't worry, it'll come back to you. Let me just say that they're absolutely right. You will know what to do if you are called upon to do that. Later, after I learned CPR, I then was coaching up at the high school, college, things like that. I also had to go through first aid and training, and also CPR training. The first aid training, consisted with things to do, heat stroke, all the things you need to be aware of when you're coaching kids and people in sports, but, sprains, broken bones, asthma, and lots of other different things like that. So I think that's really important on the first aid side. But on the CPR side, after learning the CPR, not just part of our Kelsey Fund that we were doing with our CPR training. Hey, honey, how are you? Um, and so then learning that again through the school system and being trained there. It wasn't until, let's see, I first learned CPR, I think it was the latter part, or maybe early 1994, I think it was, following my daughter's accident in June of 1993. Then got into coaching. I was coaching, doing things like that, and then continually going through refresher courses every couple of years. I'm now a foster parent. As a foster parent, required to have CPR and first aid either every year we have to go through, be recertified. I think it's every 2 years. We have to attend training and then continue with our CPR training. Let me just say, the CPR training that I got 20, 30 years ago, or over 20 years ago, is completely different than what they teach today. And but you never really think that you would really need the CPR or the training, or would really need to know how to perform it. Before I talk to you about that, I want to share something with you, because we've been talking a lot here the last few weeks about conversations, having people listen to you. One of my business coaches, a gentleman that I listen to, and I've hired, and I've hired business coaches, things like that in the past. But a gentleman that I was listening to shared something with me. He was talking to, if you blow, think of a lifeguard. If you blow a loud whistle, everybody hears that, right? They know what, at a pool, they know what that is. But if you went out on the street and just blew a loud whistle, nobody would really know why you're blowing the whistle. I wanted to say, think of a dog whistle. I mean, how loud is a dog whistle? And who hears the dog whistle? I mean, does anybody hear a dog whistle? And, people will say, well, a dog hears the dog whistle. Well, that's what I'm talking about. When we have a voice, we're giving a voice to those who no longer have a voice. Certain people will hear that voice, and certain people, somebody gave me thumbs up, thanks. So somebody will hear that voice, and it's when we speak to somebody about a particular subject and topic. When we speak to them, those are the ones that are going to hear what it is we're saying. So in this case, when we're talking about CPR and first aid as part of our water safety programs, as part of what we do, those people that would be interested in CPR are going to be the ones that are going to be attracted to our message about CPR. That's what I was just trying to say here. So now let me get back to the story at hand here. It wasn't until August of 2013. We have a horse farm. We have horses out here. We have just one now, but at the time we had a few horses. And my wife was riding horses that day, and she bought a brand new pair of cowboy boots, and leather soles. And leather soles are extremely slippery when they're brand new. Well, she got up on our Appaloosa, and his name was Charlie, and that was a day he just didn't want to be ridden, and so then she took everything off of him and she put it on her horse, Harley. Harley was a Tennessee Walker, or an Arabian, an Arabian horse, but looked like a Tennessee Walker horse, and when she pranced and walked and everything. And so she got up on it, and Harley was a rescue horse that we got, and was very well trained, and so she got up on the horse to ride. Was out in the field. I had walked all the way to the other end of the field, walking around the outside of the field, and something spooked Harley. Or I'm not sorry. We have Harley, Charlie. So something spooked Charlie, the Appaloosa. He took off towards the barn, and just at a gallop, not a full blown run, but at a gallop. Well, Harley was a follower, and she proceeded to want to follow Harley. As you go, if you imagine here, the barn's on the left-hand side, and we have trees on the right-hand side of the area that goes around into the barn, and the tree limbs are coming out. Well, if you're on the horse riding, you can't go through that. It's a very narrow spot with the tree limbs. And so my wife turns around, of course, she's trying to get the horse to stop or to, not go that way. So she pulls the rein to turn the horse to the left. So when you pull the horse to the left, it's going to jerk its head and then in turn either slow down, stop, or at least turn away from going to the trees. Her right foot, being that she had cowboy boots on with leather soles, slipped out of the stirrup. And she proceeded, as the horse turned to the left, she proceeded to slide off the saddle to the right. And of course, in August here in Ohio, it was a dry summer in 2013. The ground was as hard as a rock. And those of us that, as we get older, we don't bounce so well. Well, she didn't bounce. She hit that rock, the rock or the ground. I was standing on the fence. I saw it happen. I stood there and I waited for a second to see if she just would get up. And I saw no movement. The grass and weeds were a little high, so I couldn't quite see her all that well, but I could see she was laying there. There was no movement whatsoever. Now, my house was all the way on the other side of the field. And I knew that was a long ways to go. I jumped over a fence. We had about a 4-foot high fence with barbed wire on the top. I literally just hopped over it just like it was not even there. I ran to my wife. I saw her laying there. Her eyes were rolled up in her head. She was kind of red, pinkish in the face. She had foam coming out of her mouth, and there was like a wheezing noise, like if you would imagine like a tire leak or something like that, kind of like a gurgling and tire leak. I immediately knew this was not a good picture. So immediately, I remembered in my CPR training, they said, activate the emergency services, activate 911. My neighbor's house was much closer than my home, and I happened to recall that my neighbor was outside actually washing her car. I ran back, jumped over the fence, told her to call 911. She said, was it Lori? Yes, it was Lori. She fell off the horse, so she said, okay. So she called 911. I then hopped back over the fence, got back to her. By that time, she was 100%, as blue as the blue on this card right here, okay? She was blue. No more air. I could not hear any gurgling noise, heard no more air coming out of her. I immediately, I had a flashback to my daughter, because it's like, when you lose somebody you love, the last thing you want to do is lose anybody. I remember yelling at her and saying, don't do this to me. It's not, so in other words, you're not leaving. It's not your time. You're not leaving. I then proceeded to start CPR. Did the chest compressions. I did the breath. Yeah, you're welcome, honey. And I immediately started doing chest compressions, and then I did a breath. And when I did the chest compressions, I remember the chest compressions went right all the way to the ground. It was just like, it was like pushing on a balloon. There was just nothing really, no resistance. It felt like there was no resistance whatsoever. And, I remember from my CPR training that, you have to really, really push down real hard on, don't be afraid you might break ribs, things like that. And then it's like, went right to the ground, it felt like. I then did some breaths. I did the second chest compressions, and she took a gasp of air. At that point in time, she took a gasp of air, and within 30 seconds to a minute, she sat up. And lo and behold, paramedics, we live out in the boonies, and so they were all volunteer guys, showed up in their pickup trucks, all these things. Most of them were friends or people that we knew. They showed up, and then the squad finally shows up, and the gentleman that I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but anyways, he's a friend of mine. Goes to our church, and he says, "Rick, Lori's she's combative. She's doing this. We think she has a head injury. We've called in Care Flight. Care Flight comes in, lands in our field right outside our house." Comes over to the power lines, lands. My son and I were holding the horses back so the horses wouldn't get up underneath the rotors and get chopped up. The squad's laying out there, so the helicopter lands right next to the squad. My wife's wanting to go and make dinner. She's wanting to do all these things. But needless to say, she had two brain hemorrhages. She had a collapsed lung due to a punctured lung. She had 11 broken ribs. She had a broken scapula. That's that big bone in the back. On your shoulder, kind of like, we call it like shoulder blade. She had also had 7 vertebrae that were fractured. She spent a week in intensive care. They gave her a 20% chance of surviving the first night. And so that's the importance of CPR, guys. It's not just water safety. CPR is an important skill that everybody needs. You never know when you're going to be called to use it. And make CPR part of your story. Either make it part of a personal story that you have, or make it part of, or if you want, utilize my story here. Yeah, Cheryl, it is extremely scary, knowing just how fast an accident can happen. Accidents happen all the time. Most people who know CPR are never called to do that, just like people who have a concealed carry weapon probably will never pull the gun, just like police officers very rarely never pull a gun. But you just never know when you're presented in that situation. You need to be prepared to answer the call when that call comes. And what I learned after all that, I did CPR the way I was originally trained, and I didn't do it as the way they teach today. It's very different the way they teach today, and I'm not going to go into particulars because I don't want to say something wrong or instruct somebody, because I'm not, it's still one of those things. It's like, okay, would I remember if I had to do it today? Would I remember exactly how to do it? We get through our foster care program. They actually, when we do CPR, they give us one of these little. It's a little key ring attachment. It's a CPR face mask now because now everybody uses it. They're afraid of germs, and so inside this little package is a plastic. And I'm not going to take it out. I'll open it up so you can see, because if I take it out, there's a little plastic mask that you put over the face, so that way it helps. So that way, if they vomit, they spit, they do anything like that. My daughter's situation when she drowned. They performed CPR. She actually they didn't clear her airway, so the first breath that went into her stomach. She had ate a bologna sandwich. She ate a sandwich before going into the pool. The babysitter gave her the sandwich. So when they blew the air into the stomach, what happens? Well, it comes back out of the stomach with the food and stuff with it. So she wound up aspirating, which means that she sucked down into her windpipe the bologna, particle, all the stuff that, not all of it, but a big part of what came up in her mouth. The mask would help protect against that. That's why they use the masks and the attachments now. So that way, if somebody vomits, you don't get it in your mouth. I know that sounds really gross, but that can happen. But in my daughter's case, they then turned her head, they swiped her mouth clear and proceeded with CPR. They never could get her to breathe on her own. What was really kind of determined was the emergency squad found more bologna in her airway. The care flight people found more bologna in her airway. And not until they got her to Children's, they removed more bologna. At that point in time, they were able to get more oxygen air into her, but she had gone for too long, and all her other organs were shutting down. Kidneys, functions, everything else was shutting down. So you might say CPR was not performed properly. I'm not here to say they did it right or they didn't do it right. The point of it is at least they did something. Just like in my wife's case, whether or not I did it right or I did it wrong, the point is you do something. To do something is better than nothing. And somebody has to jump to action. And so that's the message I think that we're speaking here. Part of our 12 corners of water safety, where your knowledge meets the water. Are you ready? We're in the process of putting together the most comprehensive water safety checklist for people in their home. And I'm working on it now. We've got a huge program we're getting ready to launch. Hopefully we're going to launch it locally, test some things, do some things. I've got some companies. I'm on the phone today speaking with some people. And so I'm going to be sharing this with many of you because most of you are advocates. Most of you are looking for information you can share. Most of this, we've been working with the advocates for the last several years. Now we're putting something together for the general public, and as a tool for those that may feel that there's not enough resources, there's not enough things. I don't know. There's a lot of things, but it's all over the place. But this is the most comprehensive water safety, drowning prevention checklist that we're putting together. We're putting everything in here, and because it's important, because it's the questions that parents and families and people with homes and pools and going on vacations and everything that they don't know to ask. They don't know where to look. They don't know. So it's going to be in a checklist. It's going to be there. So they have to check it off. It's either to be knowledgeable about it or it's going to cover some area of importance. And CPR and first aid is one of those areas of importance that everybody in the home and the caregivers of the people in the homes, if they have a pool, number one, should. But every parent should have CPR. It should be given, as part of their courses, I think, once they get married or whatever. But again, I don't know. We start mandating people to do everything. Next thing you know, nobody does nothing. So, but this is real cool. So, if you're CPR trained, and they're not giving these things out, find out how you can get these, put this on your keyring. That way you always have it. It's a reminder. If you're not CPR trained, and you need some help finding somebody, let us know. We'll help you find something. So with that being said, guys, we've been on here for about 20 minutes. We started a little late, but hopefully you've got a little bit of value about this. If you don't have a CPR story, how CPR can serve you, go back and listen to this again. Listen to my story. Feel free to use that. You don't have to use my name, but you can just say, hey, I know this guy who had this situation. That's fine. It doesn't have to really deal with a drowning or water safety. So, what?
I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, that's my wife. She's alive. She's alive. So,
Because of you.
yeah. Okay. Am I blushing? Am I blushing?
Yeah.
Huh?
No.
I feel hot.
But,
Oh, she's having a hot flash. That's what happens when you get old, right? I'm going to finish my coffee and tell everybody goodbye. So, hey, everybody. Hopefully, you guys all had a good time. You enjoyed this. If any questions, shoot us questions. Contact me, rick@thekelscript.com. We'll be sharing more about our K Corner, all those things. Thanks for the heart, whoever sent that. Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. And you guys are awesome. Keep up the great work. Hey, it's Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe and have a good time. So we'll see you guys later. All right. Hasta luego.